Hello, and welcome to another training video for Enlite POS powered by Dark. If you were following on the last video, we just finished racking some items, and the next logical step for an in-store customer would be to come pick up and pay for their order. So today we're going to be looking at the pick up and pay screen in the program. To reach the screen, we have a couple of options, and I think it's important that we go over them this time. So one option to get to the pick and pay screen is to actually look up the customer. So for example, I can come here, hit customer walk-in, enter my PIN, search for my customer, and if the customer has any open invoices, meaning invoices that need to be either picked up or paid or both, they'll have this flashing red pick and pay button here. So if I click on the pick and pay button, it takes me right into the pick pay module. Okay, I'm going to get back to the main menu so that we can get at this screen from a different way. You can also use this pick and pay button right here in the menu or the pick button down here in the footer. Both of these will take you to the same place, and what happens is you click on the button, we still have to enter our PIN, we search for the customer, and it takes me right into the pick and pay module. In this video, we're going to be looking at the layout of the pick pay module and what all of the controls on this screen allow you to do. We won't be making any payments though. If you're already familiar with the pick pay module and just want to see how payments and discounts are applied, you can go ahead and jump to that video. The first thing I want to draw your attention to is the information up here at the header. So we see our customer name. This is the customer that we just looked up, Jack Napier. This is his phone number. This is his email. Over on this side, we have the customer's rank. If you remember from the customer action screen video, the rank is just basically how much money your customers have spent with you in your store lifetime. And they just get sorted by descending order. So this rank number 5 means that Jack here has spent the 5th most amount of money at our store of all our customers. He has 5 visits to our store. In total, lifetime, he has spent $1,315 with us. And if you use the membership points module, he also has 1,315 points. This little badge here means that he is a billing customer. So it just shows us here that this is a billing customer. And now before getting into what all of these buttons do, and these up here as well, we're going to go through what each of the columns in this table mean. So the first thing is, how do you select an invoice? So when I click on an invoice, this becomes the active invoice. And you can tell because it has the little red designation as well as a highlight across the whole row. So as I click on the invoices, you'll see that the little red marker moves with it. This is our active invoice. So when we take actions using some of the buttons that we just talked about above, they'll apply to the active invoices in some cases. In some cases, it applies to all the invoices we'll see as we use those buttons. You'll notice that there are also some invoices with a little green mark here. We're going to talk about that green mark in a second, but it doesn't matter. As I click on these invoices, you'll see that the active invoice, the red line, and the highlight applies to the left of this little green mark. Okay, let's get into each of these columns. So the first is the invoice number. This is the identifier for this order. Okay, if you've been following on other videos, we've been working with invoice numbers the whole time, so this should be pretty familiar to you. The next is the edit button. This takes you into the invoice change screen, which we also covered in detail in other videos. Next is the destination for this invoice. This one is, the destination is Dark Cleaners. This is not a field that you're going to have visible to you out of the box. This is a field that requires some additional configuration. Not every store needs this. Normally we only see this with multi-location customers, but if this is something that you want enabled for your store, you just let your support team know and they'll be happy to help you with that. Next is the rack column. This is where orders have been racked. So for example, here we have 2 orders that have been racked. We have 845-2 and 845-3. You'll notice that there's a green highlight, so that's very prominent, very visible. This item is racked, and inside the box is the location. So this one is in rack A, this one is in rack B. And then the remaining items have not been racked. Next, we have the tracker column. Again, this is one of those fields that is not going to be visible to you out of the box. You're going to have to request this. if this is something that you want to use, the tracker is used to model specific processes in the cleaner. You do this by scanning the invoice or the garments at a specific checkpoint in your process, and that's what gives it this status. So for example, for this invoice 845-1 that is not racked, we can tell that it's sitting at the plant. For 845-2, we can tell that this one is ranked, this one is at the plant, this one has already been picked up. So the tracker gives us helpful information about where in your process this invoice is. However, it requires additional configuration and also that you are scanning these invoices or the heat seal codes at specific checkpoints in your process to designate each of these statuses. Next is the piece count. So over here we can tell that this invoice has 2 pieces in it. To the right of that is the left column. So if someone does a partial pickup, say that we had picked up one of these 2 pieces over in this column, it would show that we have 1 piece left to get picked up. Then we have the drop and due date for the invoices. This is your drop date at the top, and then this is your due date at the bottom. Then we have our ready column. This will become populated when an invoice is racked. So it shows the date that the invoice was racked. Over here we have the balance column, and we'll get more into this column when we're working with payments, but it shows you how much is owed on each of these invoices. If any discounts have been applied, they'll show up in this column. And then finally, we have the pick and pay action buttons. These allow us to pick up or pay for an order. And we don't have to do this together. We can pick up without paying, or we can pay without picking up. The system supports either workflow. The system will not close an invoice until both the pick and pay actions have been completed for the invoice. So as an example, you can see down here we have an invoice that has been picked up but not paid. And the system will not let me undo this pickup. I can't pick this up twice, and the same thing happens for payments that are received. The checkbox will become disabled once it is paid. You cannot receive payments twice, and you can't undo them from this screen. The last thing that you can do from these records on this little table is expand your invoice, and then you can see the items inside of the invoice, again with their individual tracker statuses if you're using heat seal barcodes. And then you can also manage the pick and pay actions individually. So for example, I could pick up and pay just for this laundry shirt without paying for the tuxedo shirt. So if I click on it, the system's going to tell me that I'm leaving this as a partial action on the invoice. Everything gets updated, and if I make the payment, all of this will get recorded. We're not going to do that right now. I just wanted to show you the option that you have of expanding the invoices to see what's inside them. Okay, so now let's get into these buttons along the top here. So this first button is the details button. It shows me what is inside each invoice. Very similar to expanding them. It's just a little bit bigger, a little bit easier to work with. If I click on the details, it shows me the different items in the invoice. It shows me the balance due. I can manage the pick and pay individually the same way that I had just done at the item level. Tracker status, and it also shows me the scan history. So if I click on the scan history, this one only has one tracker scan, but for example, if I was modeling my whole process and this invoice had been racked, depending on the steps that you have, we could have multiple scans in here. For example, from storage going to the plant, received at the plant, and then returning to the drop store, and then racked, or however your process goes. You can model it, and all of these scans will show here. It shows the employee that performed the scan and the date and time of the scan. If you ever want to see the history of the garment and track where it's been, maybe it's missing somewhere, you need to know where it is exactly, this will be very helpful. Okay, very important, the details button corresponds to the active invoice. So you see we can only display the details for one invoice at a time. So if I click down here, or let's grab this guy. If I click on this guy who's been racked, when I come in here, it's going to show me the details for that invoice. So it's very important that you remember which your active invoice is, which again is the one with the highlighted row and the red mark here on the left. The rest of these buttons are to manage the pick and pay action. So I'm going to skip ahead over here to none. So right now you see that we have several invoices selected for pick and pay. We click on none, and then the checkboxes go away. If we click on all, it's going to check all of the boxes. I'm going to change this back to none. If we click on picked, it's going to select for pick and payment all the invoices that have either been picked, like the one down here, see it selected it for payment, or any invoice that has been racked is going to select it for pick and pay. And by default, the system is always going to select for pick and pay the invoices that are racked, because the system assumes that these are ready and that the client is going to pick them up. If we're at this screen and they're racked, they're going to be checked for pick and pay. Okay, I'm going to switch those to none. If we click on ready, it's going to select for pickup all the items that are ready. So these are the same ones as the ones that are racked, just that instead of doing both pick and pay, the ready button just does pick. Okay, I'm going to go back to none here. Next, we're going to move to the buttons over here on the right side. I'm going to select this as my active invoice. If I come over here to reprint, it's going to show a little modal, and it's going to let me select which items need to be reprinted. So here we have our customer receipt, our quick ticket, our invoice, tags if the tags need to be reprinted, and the customer name tag. Also on this is the pickup slip. So the pickup slip is a little bit different than the rest of these items. These correspond to this individual invoice or its ticket, the 845, if I was printing out a customer receipt. The pickup slip is for all the orders that the customer has ready for pickup that are on this screen. So when I click on this, it'll print to the invoice printer the orders that are racked and the rack locations. This is so that your employees don't have to write down where all the orders for this customer are. It'll print on the pickup slip, it'll show you the order, and it'll show you the rack location. The employee can take that to the back and start looking for all the customer's orders to get them together. This details button corresponds with the items that we have selected for payment. So if I select a few items for payment here, and then I select this details button, it's going to give me the breakdown of all the items that are there for payment. So it'll give me the item total, the upcharges, if there are fees, any discounts. This is the whole breakdown, including taxes, of how this total, the 1340 that the customer has to pay, is calculated. It's also showing over here. And then finally, we have the discounts button. But we're going to look at the discounts button as well as how to apply payments and all of this on our next video. The last thing I want to cover in this video is the invoice balance total down here. This is the setting. You will not see this on your system out of the box. All this does is just a label displaying the total for all the invoices that are showing on this screen. Some customers find that it helps to give the customer the total right away and it speeds up the process. Others don't like this. They only want to see what has been selected for payment, which is what shows up here in the payment amount. It's up to you. It's a setting that we have there if you find it helpful. Okay, I think that about covers it for this video. In the next video, we're going to be looking at applying discounts, payments, applying store credit, basically working with this screen. In this video, we covered the fundamentals. We covered all of these buttons, what they do, the information that is displayed on this table, as well as some customizations that we can make depending on your operation. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something new. From everyone here at Dark, thank you so much for your time and your attention, and especially thank you for your business. I'll see you on the next video.